Well, hello everybody, and welcome back. We're here for week 3 of the Provoked book club. I'm joined by my fellow host for this project, Sean, with a U, by the way. I apologize for misspelling your name. You have to hold up our books and make sure we don't strain ourselves too much.
It's a
Holding
heavy
up these
book.
giant textbooks. I'm joined again
My
by
guns are getting
Sean.
huge.
Yeah. Joined by Sean of the Buds and Reality podcast and Mark from the Knocked Conscious podcast. And we're here for week 3 of this special, sort of like holiday extravaganza where we're kind of like balancing ourselves out, right? Like we have the joy of the Christmas season where you get together with family and you celebrate, the good things you have in your life. And then we kind of take heavy doses and shots of like just the brutal reality of the depravity, the evilness, the corruption of the American empire. So, kind of levels us out at the end, hopefully. How are you boys doing tonight?
Merry Kwanzaa, everybody. I got to cover all my tracks here. Merry Kwanzaa. We got to get it all out of the way and be politically correct, right? Did I miss Festivus? Or has that already happened? Like,
it's already been for the rest of us, buddy. We already had it.
Look, I'm just trying to be,
I put my aluminum pole away last week.
I'm including everybody. So Merry Kwanzaa.
Mark,
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Awesome. Well,
Happy New Year.
We're gonna dive into things.
And if I may, really quickly, Drop the Mask Pod and I are doing a live stream on Thursday. We're going to be doing New Year's resolutions, and we might be having some unique, special impersonating guests that might be sharing their own personal resolutions. So stick around; that'd be fun. I'm pulling out some impressions I haven't done, and I'm a little scared because they're really bad because they're really good. So.
I never do my impressions live. I keep them very private.
I have no impressions. I'm not good at that.
I like doing impressions. It doesn't mean I'm good at them. I just like doing it. Well, we're in week. So we skipped a week for Christmas. So we're in week 3. We're covering, I forget the exact page numbers. Do you have them offhand, Mark? It's from...
Yes, sir. Pages 170 through 256 in the Paperbook version. From NATO round 2 up to, I think it's the terrorist something.
The maiden voyage.
War on terrorism.
Yeah.
Not the maiden.
Yes. Maidan coup or the Maidan revolution. Right.
But do you guys, when you were reading through this section, did you have to like stop it all, do a double take and be like, oh, I'm sorry, did I already read this?
Yeah. It's literally Groundhog Day.
It's just like it's the same stuff over and over again. Like the names change and sometimes the country changes, but it's just like I've seen this story before.
All due respect to Eastern Slavic people, but the consonants just shift around in the names. That's all I see. I don't see anything. But can I buy a vowel, please, or something? I don't know.
Well, it's different Slavic states going to war with each other, and then NATO gets involved. I mean, that's the end of the story. That's just what it is. NATO's getting involved in things they don't belong in, and that's that.
Funny is NATO's even like, hey, if you do this, we got your back. So do it. So we're kind of like poking the bear at all costs, right?
Every time, never fails.
Yeah. Well, we ended the last week 2 ended with George Bush taking power and 9/11, and there was this opportunity for Putin's like, hey, we feel bad that you were attacked by the terrorists, and we want to be part of the West. We want to be your ally. We're going to work together. Everything's going to be great, right, Mark? You're going to kick us off and tell us how George Bush just cemented a legacy of friendship and collaboration with Putin and Russia to usher in the new millennium.
Like he got to finish his pappy's work in Iraq. He decided to totally do what his dad was going to promise, right? Not move an inch eastward, right? So let's start. We'll start real easily. NATO's second wave of expansion. NATO round 2, guys. So we already have Poland, Hungary, and Czech Republic, correct? In there. By the way, Czech Mark is one of my pseudonyms. He looking for this to happen, please. So he is very happy to have this happen, part of NATO, please. Anyway, so we got this guy. We got these 3 countries. Those were already kind of like no-nos. And we're like, come on, let's bring those in first. Let's just collect those guys. So then the second wave, this one is the lies basically that we ended up doing because Daddy Bush was like, we're not going to go an inch eastward. So we decided to include 7 new states. I'm gonna read them off because they're once again, it's the book. So, but here we go. The 7 countries that we did in early 2004. He continued NATO expansion into Eastern Europe in violation of his father's promise, bringing 7 more countries into the alliance. The former Warsaw Pact nations of Bulgaria, Romania, and Slovakia, as well as the former Yugoslav Republic of Slovenia, the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the latter 3 former republics of the Soviet Union, and 2 of them share a border with Russia. So, guys, before we even continue this, let's talk about Trump wanting Greenland. Why do we need that land property in Greenland? That's right, national security. That's right. We need Greenland for national security right now, right? And here we are encroaching and sitting on top of Russia, and we don't expect them to have a response. Right? Thoughts? Anything?
Well, I mean, they kind of elaborated to like NATO going into the North Pole and shit like that. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute here. Like, you guys are crossing lines that you've promised not to cross, but you've already crossed, but we're going to cross them even more. If that even makes any sense and you want to wrap your head around that, but this is where we're at right now, is that we are literally, and not by we have done nothing. The United States government and or NATO has been doing this now for decades.
Jacob, anything?
I'll have more as you go along, man. I don't want to bog us down too much.
Yeah, not too bad. So I'll go through a couple more points really quickly, and then I want to share a clip very quickly as well. So obviously what we're having is a difference between what the United States is promising and what the actions are, right? Scott clearly details how the assurances to Soviet leaders about not expanding NATO eastward were contradicted by expanding eastward. Duh, do as I say, not as I do, right? Sounds real good. So basically the trust keeps eroding more and more and more as, once again, United States is attacked. And Putin's the first national leader to call and say, hey, we're Europeanized. We are part of Europe. We want to be with Europe. We're with you. And we still need an enemy or something, right? So then comes 2008, the Bucharest summit, where Bush, 2008, guys, he pushed for Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO, right? So literally 2008. And what's going on in Georgia, right? Didn't they just have free and fair elections that didn't go the United States way? And there's another revolution of some color or creed or fabric or flower or whatever. But there's something going on there, right? Anyone want to talk about Georgia? What's going on in Georgia or anything like that?
Jacob, you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, this all connects. I'm thinking as I'm reading through everything in this section, just how much it connects to what we've read in previous sections, right? I mean, we've been heavily involved in all of these areas up until this point, and as Scott points out, like, we say one thing, and then what we're doing is kind of, as we always do, we have our fingers in the cookie jar on both sides of the conflict. So, but as Madeleine Albright says, we can handle it, right? Because we're America. We can see further into NATO. The future. Yeah,
we got NATO to back us up, right?
Yeah. Maddie was great through all of this. Let me tell you something. Madeleine Albright was an absolute gem. Not so much.
The queen of broches. I love it. She's like the queen of revolutions. So I'll go through a couple more points and I'll share a quick clip because there's something on page 178 that we definitely want to take a look at.
Yeah.
So we've got Georgia's NATO ambitions. The encouragement of Georgia's NATO membership aspirations led to the 2008 Russo-Georgian War. How did that fare for Georgia? We just had more death, destruction. They leveled cities, didn't they? If I'm not mistaken.
They tore their ass up.
And, yeah, they just really Absolutely. And Russia just did, I don't know, reacted the way that I don't know if I would probably react similarly, I would assume, right? Feeling aggressed. It's part of the NAP, guys. I mean, I would think at this point he's feeling aggressed. I don't know, but I don't want to put myself in his shoes. So we've got Russian protests, obviously, with the color revolutions, the orange and all that. And then a security dilemma. The expansion of NATO was framed within the context of a security dilemma where Russia felt increasingly encircled and threatened. Leading to defense and sometimes aggressive posturing. Once again, Georgia. So here's the clip, because this is what I love. Page 178, Michael McFaul. Okay, I'm dragging this guy now. I've decided to start dragging this guy. I've called this guy out. I've been kind. I've emailed his Stanford email, sent him and shared him an email of the debate with Crystal and Horton, and he won't have any part of it. So I'm dragging him. I'm calling him out. He's writing a book about Ukraine and Russia from his perspective. Oh yeah, right. Let's see it, boys. So this is the part about McFaul, and then I'll play the clip. McFaul. He admitted the truth while denying it. Did Americans meddle in the internal affairs of Ukraine? Yes, he said that American agents of influence would prefer different language to describe their activities: democratic assistance, democracy promotion, civil society support, etc. But their work, however labeled, seeks to influence political change in Ukraine. How about that? So let us go to John Mearsheimer talking to Lex Friedman for hours about Ukraine. You remember how Lex Friedman felt about Ukraine, okay? Listen to John Mearsheimer, 1 quick minute, just explain Michael McFaul and how just absolutely ignorant, not ignorant, no, hubris. It's hubris. How cocky we think we are, that we are that our shit doesn't stink. I'm sorry that I use the S word. I'm going to present it now. Here we go. Okay, give me 1 second.
Computers are funny, guys.
I know. I apologize. I'm trying my best, boys. All right. One more shot here.
If it doesn't work, you want to send me the link? You got it?
I don't know if I have the link, though. That's the point. All right. Why can't I do this?
Because we're Gen Xers and we didn't have to do this before.
All right. All right. Well, hey, can someone jump in? I'll pull it up and I'll be able to share my screen in 1 second. Okay.
All right. Cool.
So
well,
go ahead. Someone jump in.
I will take this opportunity to do some. Here, we'll go solo. But before I do my presentation, because I don't want to break the flow. But if you guys are enjoying this, if you guys enjoy the content that I produce, if you enjoy collaborations like this, I will do a little presentation here, just to remind our viewers of what's going on here at LCI. I talked about this a little bit last week as well, but as you can see, this is our end of the year fundraiser. We've made really good progress. We got 1 day left, though, to try to build this gap. So we're basically 2/3 of the way funded into next year for this challenge grant, where your dollar goes double. So if you haven't already, if you have any extra you want to donate right off as taxes, or just to support us into the new year, go to libertarianchristians.com/donate, link there at the bottom ticker, and we would greatly appreciate it. It enables us to keep doing what we're doing, including stuff like we're doing here tonight. So without enough filibustering, Mark, do you got it?
We got it. I'm ready to go, boys.
All right.
Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Here we go.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And just, I always think of Michael McFaul at Stanford, who was the American ambassador to Russia, I think between 2012 and 2014. And he told me that he told Putin that Putin didn't have to worry about NATO expansion because the United States was a benign hegemon. And I asked Mike what Putin's response was to that. And Mike said that Putin didn't believe it. And but Mike believed that he should believe it, and that we could move NATO eastward to include Ukraine, and in the end, we'd get away with it because we are a benign hegemon. But the fact is, that's not what Putin saw. Putin saw us as a malign hegemon. And what Mike thinks or any American thinks doesn't matter. What matters is what Putin thinks.
But also,
All right. So there it was, boys and girls. Literally, we're a benign hegemon, so we can what? Stomp on the throats of anyone who doesn't think we are?
According to Bill Crystal, yes, you could do whatever you want. According to
And
that,
that's why McCall won't debate them. All right. So 3 more points, guys. I'll jump out. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on here because it's been awesome. I've missed you guys. I'm really looking forward to getting into this again, but we got a lot of stuff coming up. So a couple things. Western perception of Russian motives. Critiques Western narrative, often dismiss Russian concerns. Oh, yeah, Russia's just being Russia. They're just puffing their chest. They're not actually threatened. Once again, we are a benign hegemon, right? So then there was the public and the diplomatic rhetoric, significant discrepancy between public-private diplomatic rhetoric concerning NATO expansion, private assurances offering, once again, differing from the public statements. So we would, we tell them one thing and then we tell our public something else. They'd hear something on the radio and be like, wait a minute, you just told us behind the closed doors that you're doing the exact opposite of that or whatever, right? And then obviously all this trust degradation, the impact on the foreign policy between Russia and the United States, it just led them to be more assertive and more aggressive in their territories. And actually, I don't know the last time we spoke with them. Had a phone call. So I can't imagine where the trust is right now. And I will bow out. Thank you everyone for checking this out. And I'm ready to check out what you guys have to share. Thank you.
All righty. Well, I'm going to pull up my notes here then and go over my section, which goes over a lot of, again, and the narrative that Scott's pulling here, constructing in this book is really good because he kind of like, if you remember when we were talking about what was going on with the Clinton administration and what they were doing with supporting the, oh crap, can't remember the word. Anyways, supporting Islamic fundamentalism and terrorists in the surrounding regions, like in Bosnia and stuff, and in Chechnya, and how that was going to later cause issues. We talked about that in previous sections. Well, that's going to come up a lot here. So the first section of the section that I am here to cover, we kind of start again the aftermath of September 11th, and while Russia and Europe and America, like obviously the focus is on Afghanistan and Iraq, there was another region that was significant in sort of like the broader war of terror, and that was the Caucasus region, particularly the Pankisi Gorge in Georgia. This is like a narrow mountainous area that borders Russia, and it's troubled the Chechnya area, which is like right there on the border of Russia, and that obviously borders with crap, I'm having a blank here. Country that Chechnya borders. You guys know what I'm talking about.
You're talking about
one with we
Bosnia?
know.
Sorry, I got way too many notes.
Chechnya, Serbia, you're talking about? Is that
Kosovo?
Kosovo. Is that what it was? Oh, we're good.
So I have.
Hey, we all read this. We overstudied.
There's a lot going on in this book. There's a lot of countries involved. There's a lot of people involved. Just getting the names right is hard enough in itself. So
it's it's Georgia. It's it's right there. So yeah, Chechnya is right there at the bottom of Russia, and Georgia is right there below it. I believe that's right. Anyway, a lot of different ethnic groups here, but there were obviously Al-Qaeda operatives that were in the sort of like Chechen separatist broader movement, and so in 2002, George Bush and the U.S. launched what's known as the the Georgia Train and the Equip program, or GTEP, and this was aimed to strengthen Georgia's ability to combat terrorism by providing military training and equipment. And the Scott then kind of highlights that while the U.S. is working with Russia, supposedly collaborating to fight against Al Qaeda and do intelligence sharing, with Russia, they were simultaneously bolstering Georgia, a nation which was kind of at odds with Russia, because they're like, well, we want to help Russia, but we have to make sure that we don't help Russia too much, because we don't want Russia to be dominant in that region, because that would not be good for our, as you guys, as they put it, the benevolent, hegemony that is the U.S.'s force presence in that region. So, I mean, again, you feel like you're reading things on repeat, like, oh, we're going soft on terrorists when it,
I love that a superpower is benign. The unipolar, the global superpower, the unipolar moment. The second that happens, we're benign, and then we can stomp on anybody we want. It's totally okay. Very fun.
Yep. So yeah, there's this dual strategy going on: collaboration with Russia while also trying to undermine them in the region. And U.S. it has an image to uphold, right? We're the this is post 9/11. You have Patriot Act, and it's just something. I grew up in this era, right? I was in third grade when 9/11 happened. I remember suddenly America's the force for good in the world, fighting to keep the terrorists at bay, and if it weren't for America, all these freedom-hating, Arabs and Muslims would be over here killing us, right? So America has that image to maintain, but they are sort of not willing to condemn certain terrorist groups in Chechnya because, well, that would be helping Russia too much, basically. And so that starts to then sort of sow the seeds for what really starts to break the relationship between Putin and Bush, and really Putin and America going forward, because several terrorist attacks happened then during this time period, which the American response, well, leaves a lot to be desired from the Russian perspective. So one of the most infamous figures from this conflict is Shamil Basiev, and again, he was someone who had been involved in the Chechen wars, and he started out as more of a just a nationalist, but then adopted more of the Islamic fundamentalist, more radical ideology, and started to sort of forge links. There was, again, a lot of links forged between the Chechen separatist groups and Al-Qaeda, which at this point is a jihadist network. So we're fighting the jihadist network over in Afghanistan, but we're hesitant again to fight them over here in Chechnya and in their neighbor Georgia. So Basiev is very infamous for a really horrible attack that happened in 2002 at the Dubrovka Theater, where 800 people were taken hostage during a performance, and Basiev's forces demanded Russian withdrawal from Chechnya, and then there was a standoff. Russia used special forces and some kind of gas to incapacitate the militants, killed over 100 hostages in the process. It was horrible. So after this,
and on that day,
ahead.
on this day, with Jimmy Carter's passing, R.I.P. Jimmy Carter. But look at the trash that came out of the 70s with the Mujahideen and all the people that we backed in the 70s, and how they use. I would argue they used Jimmy Carter's absolute ignorance. I mean, I'm sure that guy was a nice guy. Yeah, Habitat for Humanity, really nice. But come on, man. Come on. This guy just did not know anything about what they did. And that whole hostage situation, that was obvious. I mean, to watch that, and then the day that Reagan gets inaugurated is the day they're released. Yeah, that's not an absolute statement, right?
Oh, I'm going to butt in right here on this one because this speaks to my heart. You know, you bring up Jimmy Carter in the end of his days or whatever, but at the end of the day, it was Ronald Reagan who had the 1980 election fixed in order to win it, where he made a deal with the Iranians to hold the hostages longer in order to capitalize on winning the election. Like that really happened. Like Scott Horton talked about that in enough already.
That is absolutely organized. Yes, there are absolutely some things afoot. I just want to mention that in this time, just because you mentioned Perfect, Mujahideen, Carter. This whole point. Remember that the 70s when we did the Shah, right, with Iran. So look at the blowback, and you even mentioned once again blowback.
Yep.
So,
Dude, this and it's so convoluted, right? Like, and like reading this book because like I've read enough already, and Scott's other books, and then reading this, you're just like, oh wow, like, and I always make this point, like I already know this, and this book is just reinforcing it that it really is all connected. Like this isn't just like, ooh, we have a conflict in the Middle East. Oh, and also we have a conflict in Russia with Ukraine and whatnot, and like there's not like no, this is all very connected. And the more you see it, the more like, yeah, and you understand why every time Scott speaks, it's like, you know, you ask him a 1 minute question and he gives a 60-minute answer because he's like, you know, like he's like, he wants to convey so much to the people listening, like to look into this stuff because there's so much more than what lies on the surface. Yeah, Basiev then had another attack in 2004 at a school. This was the Beslan school massacre. Over 1,100 people, including hundreds of children, were taken hostage. And then there was a siege, and that ended with over 300 people killed. And so this was like a turning point for Putin because it kind of gave him the political capital to like consolidate. So this was almost like they had a series of terrorist attacks that you could almost say were like, you know, their 9/11s in a sense, and they kind of like then they had a response to be like, all right, we have to get serious about terrorism now. And now on one hand, we would all kind of be like, okay, we wouldn't exactly be happy as anti-war, non-interventionist libertarians if, you know, George Bush's America and Vladimir Putin's Russia got together and were like, yeah, we're really going to stick it to the Middle East and to Al-Qaeda and just like blow, you know what I mean? Like having two empires work together to fight the war on terrorism still would have resulted in a lot of bad things probably at the end of the day. But at the same time, it's like, okay, like we could have at least hoped that they would have solved the terrorist problem and then we don't know what would have happened down the road. Instead, it's like, well, we continue to fight the war on terror, but then we're also going to really stick it to Russia with our response. So basically, there was reluctance among policymakers and Bush to really strongly condemn what was going on there, and like their response to Russia was like, well, hold on, we don't really want you to go there and like, you know, start wiping out and using excessive force against all these, you know, separatists and terrorists in Chechnya and whatnot. Like you should, you know, like you at least need to try negotiating with them first. And at this point, Putin
wait, is this
loses it.
Is this the same United States that backed Yeltsin to attack his own parliament when he had 8% approval rating? Is that the same? Is this the same one? I'm just trying to figure out which United States was having a bipolar moment. How many personalities do we have? Like, which one?
Follow the money. That's all you got to do.
And not to completely interrupt Jacob, but we are an interactive show. A gentleman is on chat with named Elliot James, and he says Palestine hates Israel's freedom. So I just want to let you know, Elliot James seems to think that Palestine hates Israel's freedom. I responded that Israel's imprisoning Palestinians, and he responded those children were terrorists, and I responded especially the little girls were terrorists. So where Elliot's in chat. I have no idea. So I just want to let we're interactive.
Russia. We're talking about Russia.
We're an interactive show, man. I
know,
help.
but it's like we're not.
They
we're
can't
not
help
reading.
themselves.
Listen, we're not reading enough already. We're reading. We're reading Provoked.
Can't help themselves.
It's just like they have to come in the middle of a conversation that only like. I mean, this is like what, like 12 steps to Kevin Bacon connected maybe.
We're letting
to
him
Israel.
troll us, but it is fun.
Elliot James,
the
where you
dude's,
at, buddy?
It's
the dude's
hilarious.
trolling
Well,
himself.
Hey, at least Elliot connected to us. So thank you for joining us, Elliot. Please feel
Thank
free
you
to
for joining us.
no
But if
blow me.
anybody wants to have the debate on Israel Palestine, rock and roll, dude.
This
I
is
say-
Hey, we could do
this
it.
is a
We'll
case.
set it up. Anyway, look,
This
once
is-
again, we are interactive. I just want to be clear that we are happy to invite Amity's on, Thane is on, everyone's interacted. So, Elliot's joking. So,
I hope you are, man.
well, I love you, man. Look, hey, welcome to a new year. Let's get pranked more. That's my new resolution. I'd like to get pranked more and have more fun with this. So,
I would
please
love to
continue,
wake up
man. I just
tomorrow.
thought it was great.
I would love to wake up tomorrow and realize that half the Zionists in my mentions were just joking. So,
Oh, it's beautiful. Good
I mean,
luck.
it'd be a pretty dark joke, but I'd be like, okay, but good,
Yeah,
you
good
committed to
luck.
the bit. So anyway, I wanted to read from Putin's. So there was a couple different citations here. Where's the one? So Ambassador Burns wrote in his memoir that when President Bush had declared war against the Islamic terrorists from Somalia to the Philippines, then ironically finds deep nuance when it came to the bin Ladenites among the Chechens, and the Russian president was furious. Quote, Putin saw Bush's response, including warnings against overreaction and a dalliance with moderate Chechen elements to try to diffuse tensions, as nothing short of a betrayal. And then Burns reiterated that the Russians were certain that U.S. was gunning for them next. So, and then there's a couple other I don't want to keep. I mean, Scott, you know how he is. He's super thorough, providing a lot of different quotes. But then one of them, this is the bottom of page 201. He says, so this was from, who wrote this? This was Dr. Mark Basson wrote that he was, very shaken, very furious. What was clear from his answer is that he took a very American approach to Chechnya. It was a case of these people want to hurt us and they have to be stopped. He compared the Chechens to Al-Qaeda, saying that they did not. Saying he did not counsel the Americans to meet bin Laden for talks. And then Stratfor wrote in their client newsletter, visibly angered, Putin told his compatriots at Moscow, told his compatriots that Moscow knew major foreign powers wanting Russia to collapse were backing the terrorists. Though he did not name any countries, nobody in Russia except a few U.S. Pro-U.S. liberals doubted that Putin met Washington and its allies. And then the next day, he publicly challenged Washington's hypocrisy, saying, "Why don't you meet with Osama bin Laden? Invite him to Brussels or to the White House to engage him in talks. Ask him what he wants and give it to him so he'll leave you in peace." So, listen, again, none of us, I think, are here saying, man, what we really wanted here was America and Russia to unite and just obliterate the terrorists in the Middle East. But you can understand Putin's outrage at the oh, okay, so it's there's a different set of rules here. There are some things that America can do, but we aren't allowed the same liberty, right? It's the same hypocrisy.
Monroe Doctrine again, right?
Yep.
There's the Monroe Doctrine again. And what I love, I will admit, man, Russian humor. These guys are really funny. If you can just they're so seriously funny. The way he says that, he's basically going, yeah, why don't you invite terrorists to your front steps? Because you're certainly inviting them to ours. You know what I mean? It's crazy, right? It's unbelievable.
Well, again, I mean, in Putin's eyes, this is about it's their whole thing the whole time is that they want to be part of the West, and that hey, we should have joint decision making where we're going to consider what your national interests are, but you need to also consider what our national interests are. But that's not how the benevolent hegemony operates, right? The benevolent hegemony operates by saying well, here are our interests. And if you can find a way to squeeze your interests into the tiny little air pockets that we might leave left over once we've, pushed our interests onto the scale, then maybe we'll think about that. But for the most part, it's an afterthought. Which again, it's these are statists, right? Putin's a statesman, but that's how they operate. It's that's how America operates with its allies is to be like, well, what are your interests? And even though America comes first, they're still going to probably try to listen to what UK says or what Canada says or what uh, France says. But with Russia, it's like it's all lip service and then stabbing them in the back. Uh, and you can't. I mean, you can only poke a bear so much before he, you know, uh, gets provoked. One might say. Uh, um. Anyway, so yeah, this doubles down with all the NATO expansion and stuff that Mark covered. Putin continues to have growing distrust of the West. Scott, then at the end of my section, because there's just for sake of time, I'm not going to cover everything in my section because I would need an hour. I mean, there's a whole thing about like the American Committee for Peace in Chechnya and the whole like, you know, trying to bring the Chechen conflict to an end. And so Scott does talk a little bit about how this organization continues to expose contradictions in America's approach to the war on terror, because it's like on one hand, you know, Al Qaeda evil, and there's a severe irony where it's like we'll make up a connection between Al Qaeda and Iraq and Saddam Hussein, which doesn't exist at all, to go invade that country and do regime change. But when there's an actual link between Al Qaeda and the Chechnyan separatists and terrorists, it's just like, oh, man, what can we do? I guess we have to negotiate.
You mean, what can we do? Let's fund them.
Right.
That's
like,
exactly
hey, what can we do? Can we just throw our hands up and say we can't do anything? Sure, we could do that, but no, we have to take a side. If we're not against them, I guess we'll be with them on this one, right?
Don't worry, the
It's
IMF
all binary, man. It's a 1 or a 0.
Yep.
You know, and it's crazy. And just to your point about not finishing your entire section, most people who've listened to this have probably listened to Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem, right? Most are Martyr Made, Daryl Cooper fans. It's 25 hours long. Scott said this is going to be 50.
Yeah.
So just think, Scott said he's reading it. He just finished, I think, the first section, which was HW, and he's like going it in sections. It's going to be 50 hours, guys. So just imagine. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in, because I know you're reading along, because there's no way we could share the wealth of information that Scott puts in his book. But we're just so happy that you joined us. So thank you.
Yeah.
That puts Creature of Jekyll Island to shame. That's like a 28-hour audio book or 24 hours, something like that. I can't remember. It's either 24 or 28. And that's a long, like, audio book. So for 50 hours, enjoy getting your mind blown, y'all.
Yep. Well, so my section, I'll just briefly, the last point I have, Scott kind of ends the section I have with the Boston Marathon bombing. So Scott's kind of pointing out like, hey, this creates all sorts of blowback, not just with Russia, but for ourselves. And, you know, as libertarians, as anarchists, we're often pointing out how there's this disconnect between, you know, the state saying like, well, you know, you need us and you need our military. We need the benevolent hegemony to keep the American people safe. But as we repeatedly see, whether it's through 9/11 or as Scott draws out in this narrative, even the Boston Marathon bombing, our interventions overseas lead to dead Americans here at home. And so now the Boston Marathon bombing, that was in 2013. That killed 3 people, injured hundreds, you know, very psychologically scarring for the people who were there and witnessed it, even watching it on TV. But Scott connects this event because so it was carried out by 2 brothers, Tamerlane and Tisnare. I'm not even gonna put. There's 2 dudes. Okay?
Just do freaking frack, man. Just do like
there's
twin
Tamer
1 and 2, whatever the
there's Tamerlane and Sarnav. Okay, and they're ethnic Chechens, and they had immigrated to the United States as children, and their family had fled the violence of the Chechen wars, seeking refuge in the West. And so Horton's kind of making the point that there's a connection to Chechnya. Like, this region was torn apart by decades of brutal conflict, with America, you know, basically prolonging and funding. Like, we're going to help the Russians, but we're also going to, you know, help the Al Qaeda jihadists at the same time. And so the older brother Tamerlan had become radicalized after he read jihadist propaganda and kind of learned about the history of not just Russia's role in Chechnya, but the United States' role in Chechnya. And like, there's a really important point here. So this is obviously a textbook example of blowback, which is something we as libertarians talk about a lot. Ron Paul talked about it a lot. But there's another thing here. And this is, I think, really important for me to bring up as I'm a host of the Libertarian Christian Institute. As a Christian, I obviously have religious disagreements with Muslims. However, I can't help but notice that when Muslims live in areas where they aren't victims of U.S. foreign policy versus the Muslims who do live in areas that are victims of U.S. foreign policy, there's and listen, one could say correlation isn't causation, but when the correlation's like damn near 100%, right? One has to wonder, like, man, why is it that the Muslims who are in Western countries or in the U.S., born here and whatnot, just seem, dramatically less likely to become terrorists than the ones who were born in these conflicts or connected to these conflicts where we've led to the deaths of people's families and loved ones. I mean, again, who brought up Martyr Maid? I forget. I think it was you, Mark. And Martyr Maid begins his podcast, Fear and Loathing, by asking, "What would you do?" And that's an important question for all of us to ask ourselves.
He asks it throughout.
Yeah, throughout
it's
the
not,
entire
It's not
thing.
the first.
Yeah.
It's the question. It's the.
But it's
question,
like it's the
right?
opening because he describes the Jewish pogroms, and then he says
Right.
like, "What would you do in response to that?" And then throughout he's saying like, "Hey, what would
It's the ping pong back and forth."
Right,
And what's
exactly.
interesting, the youngest brother is only one of 3 that Biden did not pardon. He didn't pardon the bomber, the brother. He didn't pardon the Dylan Roof guy. And he did not pardon the guy who shot up the mosque, or not the mosque, the synagogue in Pittsburgh. Those are the 3 that Biden did not pardon off. I think the death list, right? The death penalty list, I think. So everyone else is pardoned except for those 3. Now, what you'll find interesting, this is what stuck out to me, Jacob, in your section, is the older brother was radicalized. He went back 3 times, and they took off the terrorist to check him tag on the They took it off. They're like, no, we removed checking him on his return back. Like, what? You actively removed that. So there's culpability there from an active removal. It's not like he got snuck through. They took away that alert to check him on his return. And he clearly was radicalized. And then you look at the connections they had. And then the last part I thought was hilarious was when they got the younger brother and they riddled the boat with like 126 bullets and like a bunch of shells, a bunch of grenades, and the brother did not get hit. So how incompetent can we be? We just are incompetent on every level.
Yeah. So I'll end on this, and then Sean will close us out here. As a Christian, as a libertarian, I think both of those things would tell us that we are called to seek peace. And we seek peace when we sow seeds of peace. And American foreign policy is literally the antithesis to sowing seeds of peace. We sow seeds of resentment and violence. And listen, that doesn't mean we're justifying the actions of the Boston bombers any more than we're justifying the actions of the Bin Ladenites who carried out 9/11, any more than we're justifying Hamas with what they did on October 7th. However, just like we're not justifying what Russia did to Ukraine, but all of these actions were provoked. And in all of these instances, we see that none of our governing leaders are committed to pursuing peace, but rather they are committed to pursuing empire. And as who was it that said that terrorism is just the price that you have to pay for empire? Sean, go ahead and close us out, brother.
Oh, man. So I got the glorious part of starting with Barack Obama, who is, my God.
Hey, man, that guy won a Nobel Peace Prize.
Let me be clear. That is a fact. Let me be clear. I can do a little Barack. It's not so bad.
Dude, Barack Obama was nothing but George Bush 2.0, and the only difference between them was Barack Obama was bombing children with his Nobel Peace Prize. That's the only difference. But in the opening segment of my section happens to be called Meet the New Boss. But I would like to add in Meet the New Boss, same as the old boss. That's my homage to the Who. We won't get fooled again. I'm a big music guy. If you can't tell, I got my records behind me. But anyhow, I digress. Obama takes over with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. Clinton made a big deal about their attempted reset with Russia. Clinton held a ceremony in March of 2009 with Foreign Minister Lavrov to celebrate leaving the bad days of Bush behind, believe it or not. They had a whole thing about this. They seem to be moving on from the Cold War mentalities. Obama and then President, President Medvedev, because there was a new president for a minute. And by a minute, I mean a hot minute, because he was kind of a libtard. Let's just be honest, or whatever. But, I digress. Anyhow, they got along at first. Inside the New START treaty, Medvedev's terms was very short because of his liberal ways. I'm sorry. I got a little ahead of myself on the liberal thing. But anyhow, Medvedev's new treaty, 2009, November, Medvedev came up with a new treaty to provide a security system to freeze NATO's growth. Soon after Obama took office, congressional delegation went to Russia to meet with national security officials. Alexander Belkin explained to U.S. while Georgia mattered, Ukraine was more important, stating that the U.S. does not understand the relationship between the two countries. Now I got to read from the book. I'm going to be somebody who jumps around here and there because that's what I do. And we're going to go from New START. President Obama and Medvedev signed the New START Treaty in April 2010. It went into effect February 2011. The deal was a double-edged sword because Congress, led by the Senate ICBM caucus, insisted on administration approval for trillion-dollar renovation of America's entire nuclear weapons industry and arsenal in exchange. It is certainly still better than not having it. All the old agreements are dead. The New START is the remaining treaty restricting U.S. and Russian stockpiles and deployments of strategic nuclear weapons, or maybe was. Russia suspended participation in the treaty in 2023. Now let's go to a section called the hot mic. Obama got caught on a hot microphone promising Medvedev he would have more flexibility to remove the anti-ballistic missile stations in Romania and Poland after he was safely reelected. I will transmit this information to Vladimir. Medvedev had responded. The program eventually went ahead anyway and was officially inaugurated in 2016. What was more broken promise at that point? Interesting. And then there's one more section I want to read as for right now, called Round 3, the overload. President Obama chose not to see the reset through. In addition to the installation of ABM systems in Europe, Eastern Europe, the administration continued NATO expansion by adding the Balkan states, Albania, Croatia, to the alliance in 2009. As absurd as the idea might be to Americans that these nations could do anything to bolster national defense, it was probably only a minor irritation to the Russians. They had interest in Montenegro, but they were not in any serious contest with the U.S. over Croatia and Albania. Still, it was contrary to the administration's attempts to restore a positive spirit to America's relationship with Russia Federation.
I have to jump in.
Yeah.
Sean, you and I are Gen Xers. I'm sure you've seen it in syndication, Jacob. Cheers. Does everyone remember Coach? When Coach had to do he had to take a test and he had to do a thing to a song and it was Albania. And he was like, Albania, Albania, you border on the Adriatic. And then your imports coal or whatever. He did a whole song. That's what I think about when I think of Albania.
That's hilarious, actually. That is absolutely hilarious.
I can't believe I remember that much of it, actually, to be honest.
The fact that you do is very impressive because I can't even remember what I had for dinner last night. So good for you, man. But check this out. Then we move on to Libya. Obama and Clinton slapped Putin in the face while Putin was running Duma. He was actually the prime minister of Duma at that point. They lied to him into abstaining on the 2011 Libya resolution. They did all this to force a regime change in Libya. We all know how that turned out. Surprisingly enough, surprise, surprise, go figure. Then move on to the snow revolution. Putin continuously called out the Obama administration of bankrolling dissenters of protesting Russian elections. Clinton denounced the election as unfair. Obama complained of the lack of opposition in 2012 elections. From there, Putin kicked out all of the 3- and 4-letter acronyms out of Russia. He said, no, you guys are out. We'll see you later. Peace out, Girl Scout. American influence then gets...
Hey, Sean, on that, hold on real quick. You're talking about the IRI and the NED, right?
Yes.
National Endowment. Okay.
Yeah.
So remember, the NED is the Democratic side. The IRI is the Republican side that McCain backs, if I'm not mistaken. So just to be clear, those are the those are the ones that they all chair and they back those things that they support to feed their own selves. Okay. I just want to be clear.
That's right. And so from there, Obama, I'm going to reread this because I forget where I left off. Obama complained of the lack of opposition in 2012 elections. From there, Putin kicked out all the 3- and 4-letter acronyms out of Russia. American influence then gets the media to denounce McFaul, who you talked about earlier, Mark, and accuse him of plotting a color-coded coup. Surprise, surprise. Now, let's go to the Vanderbilt coup because that's a little bit interesting. It actually really grabbed my attention. In October of 2016, the Kremlin allegedly attempted a coup d'etat against President Milo Dukanovic in Montenegro. It started because Obama administration invited Montenegro into NATO in 2015. The Russians were pissed, obviously, but knew their compliance was key to a NATO promise still. So they kind of stayed out of it. But lack of evidence proves otherwise. And most pro and anti-Russia folks called the coup allegations a fairy tale. Now I'm going to read a little bit more from the book. Let's see. Montenegrin prosecutors told the Telegraph that they were not accusing Russian government at all, only Russian nationals. Their lead prosecutor later said it was the Russian government before changing its mind and saying it was not them again, which, by the way, they had no evidence. There was zero evidence to point out that Russia had put on this coup d'etat against Montenegro. None. Zero, zip, zilch. Okay?
Nord Stream 2.
What was that?
I was saying Nord Stream 2.
Go
Same
figure.
thing. Yeah, they blew up their own pipeline. Yeah, they did it.
The story goes
true because the New York Times said it.
Yeah, but it just reminds me of the Brady Bunch. Russia. That's just all I hear in my head all day.
I'm glad you said that because I was going to do that. You stole it. I love it. Prosecutor later accused a CIA officer, Joseph Assad, of being a part of pro-Russian coup. Why anyone should believe he would work so hard in favor of Russia's interests in the middle of a major political contest over whether the tiny nation would be brought into the NATO alliance or how it could have possibility believed his bosses back in Virginia would not know about it. Was never explained. He and his supposed client, Israeli politician, go figure, Israeli politician. I just had to throw that in there. Aaron Shaviv agree that he was only there to provide basic security advice. Assad had been working for Soros. Wow. Isn't that something? Another Jew involved in European stuff. Go figure. I don't mean that in a bad way or a good way or any way. Just go figure. Agree that there was...
Hold on. I got to jump in just 1 second. Hold on.
Yeah.
Because Soros is bad enough. We don't need to put any like nationality or any kind of like additional like weight on him. That dude is just evil just for being evil. So I just want to be clear that we're both very clear about that.
But they agreed that he was only there to provide basic security advice. Assad had been working for Soros Freedom House since leaving the agency. Like, wow, dude. Now, to move forward from that, in between there, actually, there's one spot in this book that I feel like I should read. But in between there, where Jacob kind of had brought up the Boston Marathon, where it was two Chechenians who happened to blow off these bombs and kill a few people and injure a couple hundred more, and blamed it all on Russia. The fact of the matter is that they had nothing to do with Russia, and they had everything to do with terrorist organizations in the Middle East, or AKA Muslim folks, or whatever you want to call them at that point. And feel free to fact check me on that, because I'm having a brain fart at the moment, but I believe it had something to do with Al Qaeda. If you guys, can you guys back me up on that?
Well, I mean, that's pretty much the theme of the entire book. So I don't think we have to take a stretch. Like, I would assume that'd be part of it.
You know, and please, if I'm wrong, if fact check me, I will.
Yeah, feel free to fact check us, guys. We definitely, it's 8 gazillion pages here, boys and girls. So like,
and there's a lot going on. But not only did that all happen, but there's a spot where I just need to read a little bit of this, because they bring up Edward Snowden, and about the tapping my telephone. And Edward Snowden was one of the people who really brought a lot of this into light, and literally got almost crucified for it, which is why he's safer in Moscow at this moment instead of here in the United States. And even if they pardon Edward Snowden at this point, he's better off staying in Moscow than coming here, because he's cooked if he comes here. And they know it. He knows it. We all know it. But anyways, in the spring of 2013, Edward Snowden, a contractor with Booz Allen Hamilton working for the National Security Agency, liberated a trove of documents essentially proving that all the previous NSA whistleblowers like Russell Tice, Edward Loomis, J. Kirk Weeb, Thomas Drake, and William Binney, and the great journalists like James Bamford, author of The Puzzle Palace, Body of Secrets, The Shadow Factory, had been right on, and much worse. The NSA, Snowden leaked, proved was violating civil liberties and of virtually all Americans working with the telecommunications in Silicon Valley firms to compile endless amounts of metadata and cell phone location data, search web traffic, email, and instant messenger histories. I mean, Snowden kind of brought all this, into light, and that's why they tried to crucify him. Now, I'm not too sure.
You don't get criminalized for telling the truth.
Truth is treason.
I'm sorry, you don't get criminalized for lying. You get criminalized for telling the truth, man. That's the whole point.
They're just Russian talking points.
Assange exposed it, right? All those guys.
I just love it. It's Russian talking points, right? It's Russian propaganda. I love how Scott responds to that. He's just like, you're just using CIA talking points and CIA propaganda, right?
Now, I'm not too sure if this is where I was supposed to stop, but I kept going. And I'm going to read this whole excerpt because it's so damn juicy. I feel like this is a great way to end the show. And even if it is for the next show, we'll start it over at that. The Maiden Revolution. Association agreement The war in Ukraine began in 2014. That is in the view of the head of Ukraine's armed forces from 2021 to 2024. General Valery Zaluzhinsky, probably, I sabotage that anyways. He told The Economist in 2022, for the military, the war began in 2014. For me personally, July 2014. Even the New York Times commonly refers to events in 2022 war with the phrase since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion, conceding implicitly that the fighting began well before that. Well, who started it? Too often, blind to history and context, many Americans see these problems only through TV news anchors' eyes or those of the current thing on social media. For example, most caught up in the modern narrative about undiluted Russian aggression do not know that in 2014, the U.S. government backed a violent street putsch against Viktor Yanukovych. Anyways, these names are killer, by the way. The elected president of Ukraine, the same man they had helped prevent from taking power in the Orange Revolution in 2004. Or how that led to the current crisis. This so-called Euro-maiden Orange Revolution of 2004, or how that led to the current crisis. This so-called Euro-maiden revolution or revolution of dignity was in fact the most blatant coup in history, in the words of Stratford's George Freeman. Look, you guys, I'm not even going to go through the whole rest of this. This is where things get good, okay? This is where they point out the actual straw that broke the camel's back, we're going to say, okay? We always have said since the beginning of this show that Ukraine was the hard stop. Like, you are not going to play games over here or we are going to come mess you up. That's the message that Russia has been giving now for decades. Decades we're talking. So not only did the United States or NATO, whoever you want to call them at this point, play games in 2004, they turned around and spent $100 million of American taxpayer money to overthrow a government, to input their own government in Ukraine, which led to various amounts of sketchy dealings, various amounts of what are the words I'm looking for? Biolabs. They were putting up biolabs in Ukraine. This was happening. And this is supposed to be the hard stop for Russia, just as I'm going to keep repeating myself at this point. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 was the hard stop for the United States. They said, hey, if you don't get these nukes out of Cuban waters, we are going to level you. Russia had the same message saying, hey, we are going to level Ukraine if you don't get the hell out of our business. You have made your promises. You have not kept them. As a matter of fact, you keep bringing in the dangling carrot over and over again saying, hey, if we comply, we comply. And we let you come in a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more to the east. Now they're completely NATO is completely pretty much surrounding NATO borders. And now all of a sudden, United States has overthrown the Ukrainian government. Look, guys, this is it, man. This is where it gets real juicy from here on out. And I'm glad we read this at the end, because this is exactly where 2022 kind of starts. And
on that, there's a tweet that just came through. Are you ready for this? What have we said? Who we back? Syria. What did we do in Syria? We did regime change again by backing Al-Qaeda again, just now against Russia. Read this. Here's the tweet. Ready? From Andriy Sybiha. He is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Scott Horton just reposted this with Bull from Night Court going, which is hilarious. So Today in Damascus, I met with the leader of Syrian administration, Ahmed al-Sahara, and personally conveyed the message of Ukraine's President Zelensky to the Syrian people. We are with you and ready to assist in restoring normal life, stability, and food security. Who do you think that message came from? Who'd that message come? That came from Ukraine? That came from Ukraine? No, who the hell wrote that message? We wrote that message. We write the messages, and we put all the post-it notes around the world, and then Putin just picks them up and goes, what is this? What are you doing now? What's this shenanigan? And that shenanigan, like, come on, man. How many times? How many? Thank you. Anyway, that's enough, but thank you. I don't know what to do.
It's absolute insanity that people in the United States at this point are still backing this, when we have all the proof in the world that this was provoked for like almost 4 decades at this point. 3.5 decades this has been provoked. And we could probably even go further than that.
Here's the truth. And again, like, I hate that I have to do a bunch of caveats, but with the caveat that Putin is a statist, with the caveat that Putin has done plenty of bad things by both libertarian and just normal statist standards, right? All those caveats on the table. Putin has shown more restraint and commitment to trying to maintain some kind of peaceful relationship with the West than
I've
vice
not
versa.
seen a missile land on United States territory errantly or anything. Plenty, and now we've been authorized to launch into Russia. Like, let's not even kid ourselves, but I'll step back at that point as well.
He could have leveled Ukraine by now. If he really wanted to, he could have leveled them. Now,
I'm just saying, like, our own foreign policy does not dictate that America shows the kind of restraint that Russia has shown through decades of what we've been going over by now. And also, I think a good thing to end on, something I kind of glossed over because you brought up what Snowden did, but there was also in this section, which Scott talks about a bunch, so I'm sure people have already heard it, but there was what we found out through Assange and WikiLeaks. There was the Niet means Niet, which that was a cable, a U.S. diplomatic cable that documented Russia's firm stance against NATO expansion eastward, as particularly concerning Ukraine and Russia, and that Ukraine was the brightest of red lines. And so it's like, you know, if the U.S. said to Russia, hey, if you do this, that's the brightest of red lines we have, like, and then Russia did it, like, what would the reaction be, right? Like, what would it's just, people need to ask themselves these questions, and like, look up what the Monroe Doctrine is, look up the Cuban Missile Crisis, like, understand the history here, understand that since the Cold War, everything has been trending in one direction, and that the seeds that were planted, remember the first section where Bush Sr. is like, oh, we can't let them clutch victory from the jaws of defeat. We won, they lost. It's like, and that attitude has prevailed to this day, where it's just like, you know, the Cold War didn't end. It just went on pause.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what this book has shown me.
It has nothing.
Greenland. Once we want to acquire Greenland for national security, it's specifically written. There's Trump's tweet. We want Greenland for national security. How close is that to even our shores? First of all, we're talking about border states that used to be parts of its own republic that were joined together, who have turned and who have been allowed to be like infesting on top of their property, to sit on top of them. I feel like I'd be at least somewhat trespassed upon. I feel
they're not. See, the whole game of NATO, which they portray it as, it was to bring some semblance of peace to Europe. What it really is about building an empire for the United States. Because who bankrolls NATO? United States does. It's not even close. Most of these countries that are in NATO don't even put forth a freaking dime. They don't have it. The United States continuously prints money to fund this crap, which devalues our dollar, which is You
Hold on,
know,
Sean. What you're saying here is perfect as a response to what Justin asked. I don't know who Justin is, so I'm not going to assume anything by his question. But he said, "Is it a lack of restraint or a lack of funds?" Well, hold on. That cuts both
Justin's a
ways.
buddy of mine, by the way. So
Okay.
bring
Yeah.
it on. Justin's a good guy. So, but he loves engagement. So bring it on,
Oh,
Justin.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying. Listen, can Russia afford sustained engagement? No more than we can. We can't afford what we've been doing. We've been printing money out the kazoo. We have rapid inflation. So, I mean, it's maybe slightly offset by the fact that our economy and is maybe somewhat stronger than Russia's. But then again, it's like that's kind of to blame partly on what we went over in the last session, which was the shock therapy and just absolute butchered job that America did in trying to assist Russia out of their USSR economy. So it's like no one can afford empire except by printing money and through fiat and all that. So that'd be my point.
And to answer that too, Justin, great point. So the question, can Russia financially sustain any serious level of continuous military operation, which would be needed to truly take over Ukraine? Is it restraint or lack of funds? Great. It is actually a great question. We have funds, but to Jacob's point, we're 36 trillion and what actually for real, like 90 trillion or something in debt, some weird number where we don't have an asset.
well, yeah,
Some
with
kind of weird thing.
the
Okay.
liabilities, all that.
Well, yeah, whatever. But Keynesian economics, Keynesian doesn't really, we're not, whatever. Okay. So can they afford it? No. But they could have absolutely leveled Kyiv and just said, we own Ukraine. They could not have manned it. They could not have monitored it. But they don't want Ukraine. They want the Donbass, which was part of the Soviet Union, which was captured by Catherine the Great of Russia back in like 850 something. So let's be clear about first of all, the land. We haven't gotten there because I've read it's the next section coming up. And it is the greatest question that you ask. It's not even about the fun. They don't want Ukraine. They don't want to take over Europe. They're not looking to start the Fourth Reich or whatever. They literally want their section of Ukraine back, and they're done with the United States peeing all over them. But I do think it's a great question, and please feel free to follow up if you have any more. And Sean, please feel free.
Well, I'm going to add to that because Russia actually does have the funds because they've joined forces with China now, and China will back them. China will back them. And as a matter of fact, North Korea is backing them as well. They don't have much of anything, but they have sent soldiers there. They actually have soldiers who have died there. So yes, Russia can actually fund themselves through this war because of China. They can totally.
The difference.
And what's funny is
like,
North Korea has a higher birth rate. I'm sorry, North Korea has a higher birth rate than South Korea. Just to be clear. So who's actually once again, all the caveats in place, Jacob, let's be honest. This is not promoting any lifestyle. We are America, and thank goodness we're here so we can speak about this. So maybe we can steer courses to a better America. We want to be greater, right? So this is all what these conversations are. This isn't to say everybody's negative, but when North Korea has a higher birth rate than South Korea, maybe, there's a question there.
Let me wax a little bit as my closing statement, and then you guys can give closing statements. I became more of a leftist post my sort of like high school experience, and I was very jaded against America. I learned I came out of the indoctrination of the 9/11 era, realizing I'd been sold a bag of lies, and then I just kind of assumed it's all a bag of lies. Like, America's not a great nation. We weren't founded on anything good. What we're founded on is colonialism and corruption and violence and greed, and it's just all bad. And so I fell in with the left because they were at least nominally anti-war, and I hated everything about I was still a Christian, but I just hated everything about the conservative, evangelical, American exceptionalist ethos that I was raised in. I thought it was just crap. And as I've matured, I look back at this country's founding. And listen, you got to look at it with a sober mind and realize that, yep, there are some flaws, right? There are some warts to the founding fathers, to the Constitution, to how the revolution was conducted. There are even good libertarians and libertarian arguments that say maybe the revolution was not exactly perfectly libertarian. I know Kaplan makes that argument. But listen, like, just my reflections, and this relates to what you were just talking about. The core idea that America was founded on, warts and all, was good, was based on the idea of individual liberty, and was based on the idea of not peace through strength, but peace through a resilient spirit, peace through sort of like a mutual aid, and peace through uh like what peace through conquering, not through uh like colonialism, but like conquering
Bridge. You're talking
nature.
bridge and roads initiative, kind of what China's trying to do with some of their countries.
Well, more just like what America was founded on was not what America is today. That what America was founded on was that we're not going to be like, we didn't want to be the British Empire. We wanted to, essentially secede from the British Empire and have our own self-determination. And we wanted to be a beacon of light to the world, that the way forward is not monarchy and empire, but self-determination, and governance that's based on, at least, like, the idea of representation was that, like, well, it may be flawed, was based on the idea that we should govern ourselves. Not we shouldn't have some king halfway across the ocean dictating to us what to do. We have gone so far off the reservation of that. I mean, so far. And I think that's what, like, so I've kind of come full circle with, like, you know what, like, I try to embrace that American tradition and say, like, we actually need to go back to that, because that the issue is not America in terms of the conception. It's what, it's what it's evolved into because of all the lies by I
Because of
mean,
the Fed.
well, I mean, really, we can go back to Woodrow Wilson, and then FDR and the New Deal. We could talk throughout the history, but America was co-opted, and I don't mean that like tinfoil hat, like lizard people and all that. But I mean,
It was a
also not
gradual
saying that.
progression, but it was co-opted for sure.
But it was absolutely co-opted, and we have, I like Dave said it, we have a chance. Like, this country's on a suicide mission, and we as libertarians are the inheritors of this great tradition that the founding fathers were part of, and we have to fight like hell to get back to that. And that's sort of where I'm at now, as a, in my political spiritual journey. So anyway, Sean, Mark, you guys give your closing statements here.
Go for it, brother. Oh, me? Okay. We're gonna close. I'll close out with this. United States foreign policy is by far one of the most egregious things you will ever come across in your entire life. Probably the most egregious thing, to be quite honest with you, because there has not been a war since World War II, and that's even questionable at that point, that has anything to do with American freedom and or liberty. It has nothing to do with our borders, has nothing to do with our rights, which is the federal government's job, is to literally protect our rights and protect our borders and leave us alone and protect the people who can't protect themselves. That's their job. That's literally their only job they have as the federal government. We have a 10th Amendment for a reason, and that's to see that every state runs as they see fit. Not that we have these, I need to watch my words because we're on the Christian Institute right now. Sorry, guys. But we have these people who are building an empire in the name of everything else that has anything to do with American values on your dime. And they're sending your children to die for it. They're sending your children to die for other countries that has nothing to do with our American freedom, liberty, borders, rights, anything. They are doing this. Please stop sending your kids to the military. Please stop. Because you're going to get them killed for nothing. Nothing. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Please protect your children. Don't send them to wars. Do not send them to build an empire that's not feasible to build. At a certain point, the bottom's going to fall out of everything, all of it. Why did Rome fall? Because of open borders, because of endless money printing, and because of endless war. That is why Rome fell, period. Do you want to see this again? Because we're about to see it real time. So that's where I'm going to end it. Sorry for the black pill. You can save yourself through Jesus Christ, though. There's your white pill.
I'm graying it out. All right, I'll close it out, my friend. Let's lighten it up just a little bit. Thank you to everyone who's joined. Happy New Year. I hope you had a Merry Christmas. This was awesome. I'm looking forward to next week in the new year, talking more stuff about how we can try to make things better. So thank you. That was an excellent message by Sean, by the way. Absolutely correct. What was it? 5.9 billion we just gave again. We just authorized today. I think I saw that. So to Ukraine. And there we go. But thank you again. I'm grateful for this. I have a podcast. I would just like to share the blessings because like we're kind of starting to do this. I'm feeling very good things going into the new year, especially with you gentlemen and starting this. And look at all the people that have joined us today, interacting, Justin and Amity and Zach and JC and Elliot, right? Everybody's in there. So thank you so much. But I've got a podcast live stream on Thursday. It's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Arizona time with Drop the Mask Pod. We're going to do, it's Mask Conscious, I think is the name we come up with. We mushed them all together and we are doing a New Year's resolution and we're going to talk about H1B and I think one other topic that comes up between now and then. Please tune in on Saturday, live stream, 1 p.m. Eastern. I have the Ron Paul of Nigeria on. I've got Econ Bro coming on.
Yeah.
Sean, you talk with him? Jacob,
That's
you talk
my
with
homie.
him?
We talk on Telegram too. Like
I know Econ Bro.
Yeah, all right. So,
yep.
Go ahead, Jacob.
I was gonna say I'm having him on in a couple weeks.
Nice.
Oh, sweet. Okay. So Econ Bro is going to be 1 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Arizona time from Nigeria. We don't know his name. He's super anonymous because he like literally his life is on the line. This dude, everyone, he's an inspiration. You want to talk inspiration? These are the people you look to. Okay. These are the people making it happen. Like Spike Cohen's one of my people here. This guy would be the Nigerian version of that, probably in some other unique way. And then Sunday, sorry guys, I know you guys are Christian. I don't want to impede on the faith part, but I am going to share and I don't know if it's live, but it's going to be 8 p.m. my time, Arizona. So 10 p.m. Eastern with a UK broadcast, UFO Chronicles. And I'm going to share my near-death experience and the things that happened to me and why I'm kind of pursued what I'm pursuing. Name of the podcast, all the weird stuff. I shared it with Drop the Mask Pod a little bit, but this guy allegedly is like goes deep and wide. So hopefully I can share all my crazy. I swear to you, it does not affect my lucid reason that I have for all the things that we do. So thank you again so much. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. I think Amity mentioned that it's only day 6 of Christmas, if I'm not mistaken. So we got 6 more to go or something. I can't believe that Mary was in labor for 12 whole days. That's what I can't believe. I thought that was crazy.
Jesus was really born in the summer.
I know.
I don't know, dude. There's so many different.
Thanks, everybody. Jacob, please close it out. But I just want to thank everybody. As black as I get sometimes with the pills, it's the people that come and exchange these ideas with me that make me want to be here tomorrow to do it more. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there's a lot of reasons you could be black pilled. At the same time, though, we have close to 300 people on a Monday night tuning in to listen to us talk about matters of peace and history and foreign policy and all that. And that's just on our small, humble platforms. How many people tune into Dave Smith and Tom Woods? And, we have so many great guys out there doing great work. The American Revolution, which I brought up earlier, listen, that was a handful of guys and they pulled off an amazing feat. So just as they were able to start a new nation, we can save this nation. I do believe that. Christmas is a time where we talk about peace on earth. And as a Christian, that's something I have strong convictions of. And that's what my prayer is this Christmas season, that we would continue to be advocates for peace. If you enjoy that kind of, these kind of conversations, if you think that, having voices for liberty out there, voices for, especially from a Christian perspective out there. Again, I'll just plug one more time our end of the year fundraiser. You can go to libertarianchristians.com/donate. Help us finish the year strong, fulfill that challenge grant we have. I got a lot of cool things coming up. I'll be live tomorrow night for a little New Year's Eve stream. I'll be live Friday with Alex Bernardo of the Protestant Libertarian podcast.
I love Alex.
Yeah, Alex is great. I'll be having Econ Bro on sometime later in January. I forget the exact date. And then
Someone hook me up with Alex too, please, if you could.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to be recording on the 16th. I don't know when it'll air, but I'm going to be recording with Eschatology Matters, providing a critique of Christian nationalism. So that'll be coming out later this month. All of that is made possible by your support. So make sure you support LCI. Make sure you go and subscribe to these two gentlemen's channels. I'm happy that we're doing this, brothers. I'm hoping that after this, we'll continue to do stuff together because I enjoy these conversations, and I'm just excited to see what the new year brings. So that's all we have for you guys today. Yes, make sure if you haven't already, get yourself a late,
book.
Page 341.
I'm sure you've got at least a $20 or $30 gift card or cash. Treat yourself to a little truth bomb here in the book Provoked. And, we're a little far in, but you can catch up. Go back and watch the past live streams, help you get up to speed and continue to be with us on this journey. That's all we have for you guys tonight. I'll be back here again tomorrow. And live at peace. Take care.